Be happy. What a cute little command. What a polished little knife. Be happy. As if happiness were a switch. As if pain were some rude guest you could escort out with good manners and warm tea. You hear it from smiling mouths, tidy mouths, mouths that love advice because advice is cheaper than presents. Be happy. Smile more. Think positive. Beautiful. Adorable. Cruel. Because sometimes that sentence is not comfort. It is dismissal and perfume. It is people begging your sadness not to interrupt their appetite. They do not want your healing. They want your pain to become quiet enough to be convenient. You know what is funny? The saddest people on earth become experts at performing sunshine. They laugh at the table, reply on time, say, "I'm okay," hold doors, ask others how they are, and then go home to rooms that feel like abandoned theaters after the lights go dead. They know where every crack in the ceiling is. They know which prayer felt desperate, which silence felt heavier than speech, which night was swallowed whole without anyone noticing. And still the world says, "Be happy," as if you had not tried, as if you had not begged your own heart to cooperate, as if you had not stood in front of a mirror and negotiated with your own face. Come on, you say to yourself, just be normal today. But happiness is not always a smile. Sometimes happiness is surviving your own mind without letting it turn cruel. Sometimes it is refusing to rot into bitterness. Sometimes it is dragging a wounded soul through another day without letting it deny Allah's mercy or lose its decency. That counts. That counts more than these bright little frauds know. So no, this is not about grinning on command. This is about the dangerous, humiliating, holy struggle of keeping your heart clean in a world that keeps offering you reasons to become ugly. First, you have to understand how many people use happiness as camouflage. Not joy, not peace, performance. There is a difference. A man posts quotes about gratitude while treating his own family like unpaid servants. A friend laughs loudly in public, buys coffee for everyone, says, "Love you, brother," but leaves the second your usefulness drops. A woman says she is protecting her peace while quietly punishing everyone who refuses to orbit her moods. Happiness can become theater, and theater is sometimes just pain and good lighting. You have seen it. The coworker who smiles at meetings and poisons names in private. The relative who says, "I just want everyone united," while feeding little resentments like pets. The person who tells you to stay positive because your honesty is making their costume slip. They are not happy. They are decorated. There is glitter on the wound, that's all. And you, poor thing, you thought your sadness meant you were losing, while their laughter meant they were winning. No, not always. Some smiles are just makeup for the soul. Some laughter is a fire alarm disguised as music. That is why you must stop envying surfaces. Stop kneeling before appearances. Stop assuming the loudest joy is the deepest peace. It is often the opposite. The one who posts the most may be begging for witnesses. The one who says good vibes only may be terrified of 1 minute alone with their own thoughts. The one who jokes constantly may be stitching their mind together between punchlines. Real happiness is quieter, stranger, less dramatic. It does not need to announce itself every hour. It can sit in a tired room with unpaid bills and still say Alhamdulillah without pretending the bills are not real. It can cry and still be grateful. It can ache and still be clean. It can feel broken and still refuse to worship despair. That is a nobler thing than this plastic smiling religion people sell each other. So when they tell you, be happy, ask yourself whether they mean heal or whether they just mean, please become easier for me to look at. Second, you have to stop insulting yourself for feeling heavy. Some of you treat your sadness like a crime scene. Every bad day becomes evidence against your worth. Every tired prayer becomes proof that you are weak. Every quiet dinner, every lonely walk, every hour you cannot feel delight. Suddenly you think you have failed at being human. What a brutal little court you built in your own head. The world taught you that happiness is the sign of health, success, divine favor, beauty, intelligence, balance, maturity. So when the joy leaves for a while, you panic. Something is wrong with me. Maybe not. Sometimes something is wrong around you. Sometimes you are carrying too much with too little rest. Sometimes people have been feeding on your emotional labor for years and calling it love. Sometimes your chest is heavy because your soul has been swallowing disrespect politely. Sometimes sadness is not weakness. It is information. It is the body saying, this is not clean. It is the heart saying, I have been asked to survive too much at once. It is the nervous system saying, I cannot keep pretending this room is safe. So no, not every dark season is a moral failure. A father trying to provide while everyone depends on him and nobody asks if he is sleeping is not necessarily broken because he stopped laughing. A mother who is kind to everyone and exhausted by everyone is not a bad servant because she feels empty at sunset. A student who smiles in class and then stares at the wall for an hour is not fake. A man who keeps his prayers and still feels sorrow is not abandoned. You need to stop speaking to yourself like an enemy. Stop saying, why can't I just be happy? Ask better. Ask, what am I carrying? Ask, what am I tolerating? Ask, who benefits from me staying cheerful while I am quietly collapsing? Because there are people, there are people who love your light as long as it costs them nothing. And the second that light asks for care, patience, or truth, they call you complicated. That is not your failure. That is their hunger revealing itself. Pain is not always poison. Sometimes it is exposure. Third, there is a dark little joke hidden inside the phrase, be happy. Sometimes the people telling you that are the very ones manufacturing your unhappiness. Ah, yes. The parent who controls every choice then says, why are you always tense? The spouse who withholds warmth for days then asks, why can't you just relax? The friend who vanishes when you need them then returns with motivational quotes. The boss who squeezes your dignity thin then lectures you about mindset. Funny, isn't it? No, not funny. Efficient. This is how some people escape accountability. They rebrand your wound as your attitude. If they can convince you that your sadness is just negativity, then they never have to examine their own cruelty, selfishness, inconsistency, or neglect. Your pain becomes a personality flaw. Their behavior becomes invisible. That is why clarity matters. Real clarity. Painful clarity. A man says he wants a peaceful home, but every conversation with him feels like walking through broken glass barefoot. A friend says she hates drama, but every week she brings a fresh little fire and then acts surprised at the smoke. A relative says they care deeply about your mental state, but only after humiliating you publicly, correcting you harshly, or comparing you to others in front of the room. And then they say, be happy. No, that is not concern. That is cleanup. They are not handing you medicine. They are asking you to become a quieter victim. I mean, listen carefully. Happiness cannot grow in soil constantly salted by humiliation. You cannot breathe deeply in a place where your worth is always under negotiation. You cannot stay light around those who keep assigning you the burden of all emotional repair. So sometimes the holiest thing you can do is stop confusing patience with permission. Stop calling constant self-erasure maturity. Stop calling every form of endurance noble. Some endurance is just delayed honesty. Some smiles are just postponed tears. And some people need your cheerfulness because your sadness makes their sins visible. Do you understand? They do not fear your pain. They fear what your pain says about them. So before you ask how to be happy, ask where your happiness keeps getting taxed, mocked, drained, or quietly punished the moment it stops serving others. Fourth, happiness is often murdered by comparison before it ever learns to walk. You scroll past edited laughter, clean rooms, engagement photos, job promotions, luxury vacations, polished faces, bright captions, family smiles lined up like obedient furniture, and something in you starts shrinking. You do not even notice when the poison enters. It arrives dressed as inspiration. Work harder, glow up, level up, stay positive. And just like that, your ordinary life begins to feel like a public embarrassment. Your slow progress feels criminal. Your private grief feels ugly. Your unanswered questions feel shameful. But you are comparing your backstage to someone else's staged performance. You are comparing your real pulse to their edited lighting. The man posting joy may be in debt, The woman posting elegance may cry after every gathering. The couple posting love may sleep cold on opposite sides of the same bed. The friend posting confidence may be unable to sit alone without noise. The student posting discipline may secretly hate every step of the path. And even when their joy is real, it was never meant to become a weapon against your timeline. Allah gives differently, tests differently, opens differently, withholds differently. Your chapter is not late because it is not identical. Your quiet season is not worthless because it is not photogenic. A heart can be closer to truth in a small room with unanswered questions than in a spotlight full of applause and hidden rot. But comparison is sneaky. It teaches you to mistrust your own portion. It teaches you to look at ni'mah through the window of someone else's appetite. It makes you ashamed of modest goodness because someone else's life appears louder. And loud is not always blessed. Loud is often insecure. Loud often needs witnesses. Loud often trembles in private. Happiness dies when gratitude is replaced with performance-based envy. That is why some people can have less and sleep with softer hearts, while others own more and still feel chaste. So protect your gaze, protect your comparisons, protect the stories you tell yourself when you see others shining. Because sometimes you are not sad from deprivation. You are sad from exposure to too many illusions. And illusions are greedy little thieves. They steal peace from the living and hand it to the imaginary. Fifth, let me tell you something ugly about the chase for happiness. If you make it your idol, it humiliates you. Oh yes. The more desperately you grab at feeling good all the time, the more fragile you become. Every inconvenience feels like betrayal. Every sad morning becomes a spiritual emergency. Every lonely evening turns into a verdict. You start monitoring your own emotions like a suspicious guard. Do I feel joy yet? Why am I still heavy? What is wrong with me? And now your pain has a second pain attached to it, the fear of still having pain. That is how people get trapped, not because sorrow visited them, but because they could not stop worshiping the absence of sorrow. Real peace is sturdier than happiness. Happiness can be weather. Peace is architecture. Happiness can be laughter at dinner. Peace is being able to sit alone without feeling abandoned by your own soul. Happiness can be a good phone call, a compliment, good news, a successful day. Peace is deeper. Peace can survive unanswered messages, delayed relief, misunderstood intentions, even grief. You need that deeper thing, because if your entire faith in life depends on feeling bright, then one dark week will make you question everything. A lost opportunity, a betrayal, a rejection, an illness, a financial strain, a season of waiting, and suddenly you think you are falling apart. But maybe you were built on the wrong measurement. Maybe you thought be happy meant never tremble. Maybe you thought strong people smile more. No, strong people return without becoming filthy inside. Strong people ache without losing adab. Strong people get disappointed and still do not poison everybody around them. Strong people cry, then wash their face, then keep their prayers from becoming theater. Do you see? The command is not to feel pleasure every hour. The command is to protect the soul from corruption while living through whatever hour arrives. A man who lost work but refuses to lie, refuse worship, or crush his family under his frustration may not look happy, but he is carrying something far more honorable than shallow cheerfulness. A woman who has been ignored, belittled, and tested, but still resists turning cruel, is not failing at life. She is fighting a war invisible people could never survive with their little slogans. So stop begging happiness to save you. Ask for steadiness. Ask for sincerity. Ask for a heart that does not become arrogant in ease or rotten in pain. Because a happy face can hide a dying core. But a steady heart can walk through darkness without kneeling to it. Sixth, people do not realize how often unhappiness is not born from pain itself, but from having to pretend pain is not there. That pretense, that performance, it rots a person slowly. You laugh when you are tired. You say, "It's all good," when your chest is tight. You answer, "I'm fine," because explaining is exhausting. You sit at weddings with a polite face while your mind is wandering through old disappointments like a stray dog. You attend work, smile at friends, say kind things, nod at advice, and all the while, a quieter truth is choking behind your teeth. Then one night, alone, the body collects payment. You stare too long. You stop responding. You feel irritated by small sounds. You become too tired to fake enthusiasm. You want silence not because you are arrogant, but because speaking without honesty has started to feel like self-betrayal. That is why some of the nicest people become suddenly distant, not because they stopped caring, but because caring while bleeding has a cost. And nobody notices until your performance gets rusty. Then they call you moody. They call you negative. They say you changed. Of course you changed. Constantly swallowing yourself changes the texture of a human being. A son who is always the strong one in the family, always calm, always responsible, always available, eventually begins to feel resentment not because he hates them, but because no one asks how strength is being financed. A wife who keeps peace in the home by eating every insult quietly eventually loses laughter not because she is difficult, but because silence has been used as a weapon against her dignity. A friend who is the therapist for everyone eventually becomes emotionally allergic to one more "can I vent?" because no one remembers he is a person and not a public utility. This is what I mean when I tell you that unhappiness is often an unpaid invoice. Years of suppressed honesty, delayed grief, swallowed disappointment, unspoken boundaries, undeclared loneliness, unprocessed disrespect. People think sadness erupts from nowhere. No, usually it leaks through ceilings that have been damaged for a very long time. And then society loves this part. Society arrives late to the disaster and hands you glitter. Be grateful, smile, go out more, stop overthinking. Yes, of course, wonderful. Throw confetti at the structural collapse. That is why some advice feels insulting. Not because gratitude is wrong, not because joy is wrong, but because shallow instruction given to deep exhaustion feels like mockery wearing good manners. Healing starts the moment you stop lying to yourself about what hurts. It starts when you admit, this relationship drains me. This job humiliates me. This friendship only wants my light, not my truth. This family pattern keeps asking me to bleed quietly and call it respect. That honesty may not make you smile immediately, but it will stop the internal civil war. And that matters. A peaceful soul is not one that never hurts. It is one that no longer has to deny its own injuries in order to be accepted. There are rooms where your happiness was never going to survive because the room itself fed on self-erasure. There are people who only liked your good energy because it helped them avoid facing what they took from you. There are communities where being cheerful was less about joy and more about obedience. So when you feel yourself becoming quieter, heavier, more difficult to impress, do not rush to condemn that change. It may be the beginning of truth. It may be the soul refusing to keep dancing on a broken ankle for other people's comfort. And truth, even when painful, is kinder than a bright lie that asks you to disappear inside it. Seventh, there is a special kind of sorrow reserved for people who were taught that being lovable means being easy. Easy to please, easy to use, easy to reach, easy to interrupt, easy to borrow from, easy to unload on, easy to misunderstand because they will explain themselves kindly anyway. These people grow up believing happiness is a reward given to them only after everyone else is comfortable. They do not ask, what do I need? They ask, what version of me causes the least friction? And that creates a very polite kind of misery. You become the peacemaker, the soft one, the patient one, the one who always finds reasons to excuse the sharpness of others. They are stressed. They didn't mean it. It's okay. I'm okay. You keep translating disrespect into empathy until your own nervous system forgets the difference between kindness and surrender. Then one day, something small happens, very small. Someone talks over you again. Someone leaves you on red again. Someone takes your effort for granted again. Someone asks for one more favor without noticing the exhaustion in your face. And instead of the usual patience, something cold rises in your chest. Not hatred, not evil, recognition. You are tired of being easy to consume. That moment is terrifying because it feels like you are becoming hard, mean, selfish. You are not. You are meeting the bill. You are discovering that every nice identity can become a prison if it forbids truthful boundaries. Some people loved you only while your softness was available without cost. They praised your heart when that heart opened on command. They called you mature when maturity meant silence. They called you humble when humility meant accepting less. They called you peaceful when peace meant never exposing the ways they benefited from your restraint. And then, the instant you became harder to access, slower to reassure, less eager to rescue, suddenly you were different. Yes. Different like a locked door to a thief. Different like rain stopping in the middle of a drought. Different, like a person finally hearing their own inner witness. Happiness cannot live long in a soul that is permanently rented out. It cannot grow where every emotion is negotiated according to other people's appetites. A man who spends his 20s making everybody comfortable may wake up in his 30s feeling spiritually bankrupt, not because he lacked blessings, but because he was never allowed to belong to himself. A woman who spent years being praised for her patience may realize that what people really admired was how quietly she endured their selfishness. A son may look around one day and notice that his respect has been defined only as obedience, never as dignity. These realizations hurt because they expose how much of your goodness was rewarded only when it was convenient to others. And here comes the dark joke. When you finally start protecting yourself, the same people who benefited from your overgiving will accuse you of losing your joy. You used to smile more. Of course you smiled more. You were disappearing more. You used to be so positive. Yes, because your positivity was being harvested like a crop. You changed. Good. Good. Because some changes are mercy. Some hardness is honesty. Some distance is the soul learning that it does not have to be endlessly available in order to deserve love. So if be happy has always meant be easier to use, then reject that version of happiness with your whole chest. Choose a cleaner one, a steadier one, one that does not require self-erasure as an entry fee. Eighth, let us speak about laughter, because people misunderstand it so badly. They think laughter means lightness. They think a funny person is a safe person. They think the one who keeps the room entertained must be free. Sometimes the funniest one is just the most experienced at disguising rupture. Humor can be elegance, yes. It can also be a bandage wrapped around humiliation so tightly it starts to look like style. You have seen it. The man who turns every pain into a joke before anyone can pity him. The woman who mocks her own exhaustion so no one has to ask if she is drowning. The friend who keeps everybody laughing because if the room ever goes quiet, his own thoughts become audible. That performance becomes addictive. People start loving the mask. They expect it on demand. Say something funny. Cheer us up. You're always the lively one. And now imagine the cruelty of what happens next. The day the comedian is too tired to perform, the room treats him like furniture that stopped working. No one asks what it costs to turn sorrow into entertainment. No one asks why the punchlines became necessary in the first place. Sometimes dark humor is not joy. It is self-defense with rhythm. It is dignity refusing to collapse in public. It is a cracked soul trying to control the narrative before shame does. A son laughs off the pressure of being the responsible one, because if he says the truth, if he says he is angry, if he says he is tired, if he says he feels invisible, he risks being called ungrateful. So he jokes. A wife jokes about doing everything alone because the alternative is admitting she feels emotionally abandoned in her own house. A student jokes about failure, about sleep deprivation, about feeling lost, because sincerity sounds too naked in a culture that rewards confidence theater. And then people tell these souls to be happy, not realizing they already built a whole circus just to avoid frightening everyone with the truth. That is why some laughter makes the room warmer and colder at the same time. It carries blood under the makeup. There is a reason hysterical laughter sounds so close to crying. Hear it? That edge? That almost break? The body knows. The body always knows. Sometimes laughter is the last elegant thing pain can do before it begins to shake. And here is where people fail one another most. They consume personalities but ignore patterns. They enjoy your brightness and never investigate its source. They admire your wit and never ask what wound taught you timing. They love your energy and never notice that the energy disappears only after certain calls, certain rooms, certain names, certain expectations. True compassion listens beneath tone. It hears strain inside charm. It notices when jokes are arriving too fast, too polished, too necessary. It notices when someone has become the permanent entertainer of their own suffering. So if you are the one always making everyone laugh, pause long enough to ask yourself a dangerous question. Is this joy, or is this camouflage? Are you light, or just quick? Are you healing, or just skilled at distracting people from the bruise? Because there comes a point when every soul must decide whether it will keep being lovable in costume or risk being seen in truth. And truth may not make you immediately likable. It may make some people uncomfortable. It may silence rooms that used to feed on your sparkle. But it will stop the quiet violence of being celebrated for a version of yourself that is secretly exhausted. Happiness worth having can survive sincerity. The fake kind cannot. The fake kind needs an audience, perfect timing, and your willingness to bleed artistically. Refuse that arrangement. You are not a stage built for other people's appetite. You are a soul entrusted to you. Ninth, there is also the sorrow of delayed life, and not enough people speak honestly about it. You do everything right. You try to stay clean, you work, you wait, you hold your tongue, you lower your gaze from what is not yours, you protect your reputation, you make dua, you act with patience because you fear becoming impulsive and filthy. And then, nothing opens when you hoped it would. Marriage is delayed, rizq is delayed, recognition is delayed, healing is delayed. The apology never comes. The effort is not seen. The better chapter seems to keep missing your door. That kind of waiting does strange things to a person. It does not always make them rebellious. Sometimes it makes them quietly ashamed. They start wondering whether they are defective, unchosen, forgotten, difficult to love, late beyond repair. A man watches less sincere people move ahead and begins to doubt the meaning of his restraint. A woman sees others enter marriages while she keeps carrying herself with dignity through another Eid of explanations and thin smiles. A student works hard, avoids shortcuts, honors the path, and still sees mediocre noise rewarded faster than honest effort. This is where "be happy" starts sounding almost insulting. What exactly are you asking them to do? Celebrate delay as if the chest does not feel time? No. Better language is needed here. Cleaner language. Happiness is not always the gift of the waiting. Sometimes dignity is. Sometimes sabr is. Sometimes not becoming jealous, arrogant, reckless, or faithless in the waiting. That is the miracle. Because prolonged waiting exposes the raw wiring of the soul. It shows whether your trust was in Allah or in your timetable. It shows whether your obedience was devotion or just a negotiation for outcomes. That question hurts. It hurts because we do not like discovering how conditional our inner peace can become. I will be calm if. I will be grateful when. I will feel whole once. But some of the most noble hearts on earth learn contentment in unfinished chapters. Not because delay is painless, not because longing vanished, but because they refused to let longing become a rival lord inside them. They still wanted, they still cried, they still asked, but they did not turn withheld things into proof of divine abandonment. That restraint, that is not glamorous. It will not go viral. It will not impress people who only recognize happiness when it sparkles. Yet it may be one of the purest forms of inner beauty. A person who keeps their adab while feeling late is carrying a kind of nobility noise-loving people cannot even measure. So when the title says "Be happy," I do not hear "erase your ache." I hear a more difficult command. Do not let waiting teach your heart ugliness. Do not let delay make you mock blessings, envy others, or treat yourself like a rejected thing. And if all you can manage some days is to keep from becoming bitter, then perhaps that is already a form of happiness, more truthful than smiling on command. 10th. Some people are unhappy because they built their whole self-worth on being admired, and admiration is one of the cruelest currencies in the world. It rises, it falls, it flatters, it vanishes. If people clap, you feel real. If they ignore you, you collapse inward. If they praise your appearance, your humor, your productivity, your intelligence, your usefulness, you breathe easier for a few hours. But the moment attention leaves, panic enters. That is not peace. That is dependency in expensive clothing. A woman receives compliments and feels alive. Then, one colder week from others turns her mirror into an enemy. A man is respected while he earns, provides, performs, leads, and the second he struggles financially, he starts feeling invisible, ashamed, almost less masculine. A content creator feels loved when numbers rise and spiritually hollow when silence arrives. This is dangerous because it hands strangers access to your internal weather. It lets applause author identity. It lets neglect define value. And strangers are careless authors. They will celebrate you for qualities that disappear under pressure. They will ignore virtues too subtle for spectacle. They will reward performance before character, brightness before depth, certainty before sincerity. Then you wonder why happiness will not stay. Of course it will not stay if it enters only through other people's mouths. A piece borrowed from praise is already preparing to leave. How humiliating. To realize you have been waiting for people with unstable attention spans to tell you whether your existence is worthwhile. But most of us do this in some form. We all want witness. We all want tenderness. We all want to feel chosen, seen, valued. The problem begins when witness replaces rootedness, when attention becomes oxygen, when neglect feels like erasure. A rooted soul can enjoy praise without becoming addicted to it. It can feel the sting of being overlooked without turning that sting into an identity. It can lose position, status, popularity, or constant validation and still whisper, with a trembling but clean chest, "My worth did not begin in their eyes." That sentence is difficult, very difficult, because some wounds were built exactly where validation should have been. A child ignored grows hungry for applause. A spouse emotionally starved becomes vulnerable to every warm gaze. A hard-working man unseen by those closest to him begins to chase respect in rooms that only love performance. A kind woman, repeatedly unappreciated, begins to measure herself by whoever notices first. But attention is not love, and admiration is not peace. Sometimes admiration is merely hunger looking for something pretty to consume. Sometimes being noticed more only means being used more elegantly. So be happy cannot mean be adored. It cannot mean win every room. It cannot mean become so polished that nobody withholds approval. No, it must mean something steadier. Know who you are before applause arrives, and keep knowing who you are after it leaves. Otherwise, every crowd becomes a false god, and every silence becomes a punishment. A soul that depends on admiration will always be one ignored message away from collapse. A soul that remembers its Lord may still ache, still long, still tremble, but it will not be owned by every pair of eyes that looks away. 11th. Happiness is often blocked by ungrieved versions of yourself, still wandering around inside you. The child who wanted gentleness. The teenager who wanted belonging. The young adult who wanted one clean chance, one truthful love, one room where effort was noticed without being exploited. These versions do not always disappear just because you became older, more religious, more disciplined, more impressive. Sometimes they remain inside, barefoot, carrying old embarrassments like little boxes no one helped them open. And then you wonder why present blessings do not fully land, why success tastes thin, why affection scares you, why rest feels suspicious, why compliments bounce off, why peaceful days still carry a shadow. It is because some part of you is still standing in an old hallway, waiting for a door that never opened. A boy who was only praised for achievement may become a man who cannot enjoy love unless he is proving value constantly. A girl whose feelings were dismissed may become a woman who apologizes for every need and then silently resents everyone around her for never guessing it. A person betrayed early may smile in later goodness and still scan the room for the hidden knife. This is not madness. It is unfinished grief wearing modern clothes. And no, pretending to be cheerful will not solve it. More productivity will not solve it. More followers, more compliments, more purchases, more busyness, none of it reaches the abandoned room if you never tell the truth about what was lost there. Sometimes be happy becomes a command that keeps people from mourning properly. Move on, forget it, stop dwelling. Easy to say when the wound was not built into your nervous system. Grief is not always about death. Sometimes it is grief for a father you never really had while he was alive. Grief for a marriage that looked respectable but never felt safe. Grief for years spent proving things to people who had already decided to misunderstand you. Grief for the version of yourself who was bright before repeated disappointment taught caution. Real happiness cannot be built on top of denied grief forever. Eventually the floor complains. Eventually the smile starts shaking. Eventually the body refuses to keep carrying unlabeled sorrow without consequence. So perhaps one of the kindest, hardest things you can do is grieve without theatrics. Grieve with adab. Grieve without making despair your religion. Grieve without turning pain into identity. Just tell the truth. This hurt me. That shaped me. I lost something there. I am still learning how to stop expecting that old wound to define every new room. There is humility in that. There is worship in refusing denial. Because Allah does not require you to act untouched by what touched you. He requires sincerity, restraint, repentance when needed, and trust that no injury cancels his ability to restore. So if joy feels delayed, ask yourself whether old sorrow has been waiting politely in the hall for years, unintroduced, unacknowledged, unburied. Some parts of you are not demanding drama. They are only asking to be told the truth before you order them to smile again. Conclusion: be happy? What a strange little title. What a bright sign hanging over a battlefield. Because now you know the truth, don't you? Happiness is not a command you obey with your face. It is not a trick of lighting. It is not a social performance. It is not keeping everybody comfortable while your own soul goes hungry in the corner. It is not forced positivity. It is not pretending your wounds are healed because other people are tired of looking at them. It is something heavier, cleaner, more frightening. It is the refusal to let pain recruit you into ugliness. It is the refusal to let betrayal teach you treachery. Let neglect teach you contempt. Let delay teach you jealousy. Let loneliness teach you desperation. Let admiration teach you vanity. Let sorrow teach you disbelief in mercy. That is why some of the happiest souls do not look dazzling every hour. They may look tired. They may sound quiet. They may cry. They may pause before answering. They may laugh strangely, as if humor and heartbreak learned to live in the same mouth. But inside, there is a cleaner architecture, a steadier throne, a place where the soul says, I will not sell my character just because my feelings are heavy. That is rare. That is beautiful in a way shallow people can never market. Look around. The world is full of decorated misery, smiling resentment, fashionable emptiness, loud despair with perfect teeth. People calling themselves happy because they are distracted, desired, entertained, envied, busy, admired, numbed. That is not victory. That is sedation with good branding. Real happiness is quieter and more expensive. It asks you to confront what hurts without kneeling to it, to name what drains you without making cruelty your personality, to wait without worshiping the thing withheld, to be unseen without becoming fake for applause, to be wounded without becoming a wound with legs. It asks you to protect your tongue when your chest is burning, to protect your gaze when envy is easy, to protect your prayer when delay is humiliating, to protect your softness without offering it to every hand that reaches greedily. It asks you to grieve honestly, laugh honestly, love honestly, and leave dishonestly comfortable rooms even when they once called you the happy one. Do you hear me? The point was never to become a permanent smile. The point was to become a person whose heart remains habitable, a place where faith can still sit, a place where gratitude is still possible without lying, a place where pain visits but does not redecorate the whole house. Some of you thought happiness meant never breaking. No. Sometimes happiness is what remains after the breaking fails to make you filthy. Sometimes it is the tiny, trembling dignity of still saying Alhamdulillah through confusion. Sometimes it is going to sleep without having betrayed yourself that day. Sometimes it is refusing to curse what Allah delayed for wisdom you cannot yet see. Sometimes it is surviving a room that never understood you without letting that room define you forever. So when they say be happy, do not hear a shallow instruction. Hear a more severe invitation. Cleanse your heart, not your image. Seek steadiness, not theater. Seek truth, not brightness. Seek a peace that can survive silence, rejection, waiting, grief, and the slow, humiliating work of becoming sincere. Because one day, the laughter will fade, the crowd will leave, the compliments will thin out, the distractions will grow old, the beautiful masks will crack, and what will remain? You, your Lord, your heart. Make sure that heart is not a stranger to you when the room finally goes quiet.